seat-by-seat battle. The Labor Party moved a lot of resources into particular seats, like Herbert. They abandoned Leichhardt on Monday and moved resources into Herbert, trying to sandbag Herbert. They obviously focused on individual seats, and we've certainly been out-resourced by the Labor Party, there's no doubt about that. But I'm confident that the people of Australia will make the right decision.
Well, if you're confident that they are you... But in terms of your own observations as you've gone round this country and on what you've picked up already today, how well-based is your confidence?
Well, I'm very confident the people of Australia will make the right decision. I hope that they've made a decision our way. That's what I'm saying.
Intelligence you're basing it on today.
Oh, look, Kerry, I've got a range of different sources of intelligence, even some of it from the Labor Party, I might add. Yeah. So it's very intriguing who rings you up if there's going to be a very close election result. But I would say to you that it has been a fantastic campaign from our perspective. It's been incredibly disciplined, very focused. We've been very open and honest with the Australian people, and the great Labor Party machine is quite obviously a failure. And whether they win or whether they lose, I think they'll tear themselves apart.
What is the most that you can hope for tonight? A majority of 1 or 2, maybe 3?
I suspect that's right. It'll be very, very close. If I was a betting man, I'd say the most likely result is some sort of hung parliament, but I'm not a betting man.
You're a hopeful man right now. Joe Hockey, thanks for taking the time to join us this early in the night.
Thanks very much.
OK, now Anthony.
Just to say, I'm looking at overall figures. At this stage, I've got Labor losing 6 seats to the Coalition. I've got the Coalition ahead in 13 other Labor seats, which brings you to 19. I've got Labor gaining 1 seat McEwen and ahead in Latrobe. So at this stage, there's a net shift to 17 seats. Now, that's still too close to call because some of those seats are doubtful. You don't give them away at this stage of the night. But that means at this stage, we'll be here for a long time yet.
Well, that's the magic number, Kerry, 17 seats. So, but I agree with Anthony. I think we're still, going to be a long night. But I must say, looking at that swing in Queensland of 5.8% on nearly 10% counted, I mean, we pick up, if it's uniform, we pick up 10 seats with an under 5% swing. So
that's the big if, isn't it?
That's the big if.
If it's uniform.
Yeah, if it's uniform. We just don't know that yet, and we won't know that for a while. But McEwen is, I'm afraid, with the loss of Fran Bailey, and despite the good efforts of our candidate, one of those seats that's so line ball that I suspect it'll move to the Labor column, which means we have to win 18 elsewhere. But I do hope Jason can hang on in Latrobe. So.
Well, that's going to become enormously important, isn't it, Latrobe and hanging on to Corangamite?
Well, I think it's panning out pretty much as we expected. Swing against us in Queensland, still a bit early to see what the dimensions of that is, both in the macro but also, most importantly, on the ground. A smaller swing in New South Wales, but again the same consequence where it extends to. But also we're doing obviously better in Victoria, picking up. I think we will pick up McEwen, given Fran Bailey's departure, but picking up McEwen. The very early figures I saw from Latrobe were helpful, but nonetheless, too early. I think we'll hold Corangamite, and if we haven't seen any South Australian figures yet because they're half an hour behind, but if we could snatch a seat in South Australia, that would also be a very important buffer. I agree with Anthony. It's 5-0. It's 5-0 in Tasmania, so I think that's fine. But it is going to be what's the extent of the losses in Queensland, and can we make up in Victoria and possibly South Australia?
Well, let's take a look at some of those Victorian seats, and we'll start with the seat of Melbourne, where the Labor candidate is under threat from the Greens. And we've spoken about this before, held by Lindsay Tanner. He's retired. Labor with a margin of 4.7%, 2.3% counted.
And we've got, on those figures, the Labor Party is on 947, Adam Bandt. The Greens are second. Last time they finished third and moved into second. But the primary vote, there's the problem for Labor, 41.4. Now, we're not doing any booth comparisons this electorate, so we're not sort of giving it away as quickly as we can in other seats. But that's a significant swing. The seat remains in doubt. That's only a very small sample of booths at this stage. And actually, I think they're coming from rather good Labor areas as well, which won't be good news for the Labor Party.
Okay.
So at this stage, the Greens are ahead in that seat.
Okay, the seat of Latrobe, which could well turn out to be a vital seat for Labor to hold tonight, or to take tonight. This is held by Jason Wood. He's held it since 2004 with a margin of 0.5%. We've got 10.7% of the vote counted.
And we've got Jason Smith on 4595. He's ahead. There's a lot of booths. It's done around Narra Warren and that area. There's quite a smattering of booths there. Jason Wood's ahead. His primary vote's down 1%. The Labor primary vote's down 4%, but the Green vote is up 4%, and the Sex Party's got 2.3% there. 50.6 for Labor. A 1.1% swing to the Labor. That seat's still in doubt. I've only got 2 preference counts in that booth. I think on the primary votes, those figures might be slightly better for Labor, but we'll have to wait for more counting in Latrobe.
Okay, we'll look at the seat of Chisholm in Melbourne's eastern suburbs. This is held for Labor by Anna Burke on a relatively safe margin of 7.4%. With 5.8% of the vote counted, it might still tell us a story of the swing.
Anna Burke's held it since winning it when Michael Wooldridge moved seat in 1998. She's held it since 1998, 48.7 to 35.8. The figure tightens up on preferences, and when you factor in the booths in that electorate, there's a swing of 2% to the Liberal Party, but Anna Burke will still go on to retain Chisholm.
Okay, we'll look at the seat of Dunkley. This is Melbourne's southeast, down to Frankston. Held by Bruce Bilson for the Liberal Party since 1996 with a margin of 4%. But there is a bit of a swing on to Labor there with nearly 12% of the vote counted.
Yes, and this one's going to be interesting because we're going to need preferences. I've got 6 of 37 first preference vote booths. Labor's ahead. I've got a rod collection of booths there, which looks like a representative sample to me, and Labor's ahead on the primaries, which I wouldn't expect on the numbers I'm looking at. It's factoring into a 2.4% swing to Labor, but I haven't got a preference count on those numbers. That's not enough to defeat Bruce Bilson. I think at this stage we've got the Liberals ahead, but we're not giving the seat away.
Okay, the seat of Deakin in Melbourne's eastern suburbs. Again, Mike Simon has held this since the last election for Labor on a margin of 1.4%, and we've got 6.5% counted there. And
Phil Baresi, the Liberal MP, former Liberal MP for the seat, 2336 to 42.7 to 40.8, nearly 12% there with the Greens, significantly. When we factor in what booth that information is from and make an estimate of preferences, what we come up with is a swing of 0.9%, and that is to the Liberals. Not enough. That seat's still in doubt.
Okay, but it's interesting that we're getting slightly different swings in different parts of Melbourne. We might. I know we've got Mike Kelly standing by, the sitting Labor member in Eden Monaro. We'll just take a very quick look at the figures in Eden Monaro first. This takes in Queanbeyan, down outside Canberra, down to the south coast of New South Wales, and with 5.4% of the vote counted. Anthony?
Well, we've got 20 of the 79 booths with first preferences, and on those numbers, Mike Kelly is ahead of David Gizzard from the Liberal Party, 11% there with the Greens, small numbers with other parties. When we factor in the 15 booths with preference counts, what we're seeing is a 1.1%. I'm not sure if I've got newer or older figures, but it's only a small swing. It's got Labor. We've got Labor retaining there. That looks like a pretty accurate prediction at this stage of the night. And that looks like Labor will hold on to Eden Monaro.
Well, Mike Kelly, we've got Anthony Green saying that he thinks you're going to keep your seat. But if you do, you're going against the trend in New South Wales. I wonder why.
Oh, g'day, Kerry. Well, I think, rural and regional seats really have big issues confronting them, issues to do with health. But in particular, in the last week and a half, I've seen this broadband issue really take off. The broadband issue is so important for us. It's something that will help us to overcome disadvantages in education, in health, and give our regional businesses a chance to compete on the world stage. And that was really starting to permeate right across the region in this last week and a half. But of course in Eden Monaro it's never much of a margin, and of course we'll have to wait for much later in the evening because booths vary so greatly in this region. Well, it's going to be a nail-biter right across the country from the early indications, Mike, but we've got used to seeing Eden Monaro as a bellwether seat, the seat since 1972 that goes where the government goes, but there's a possibility you might be about to break the trend tonight. Oh, look, I hope not, and I really don't think that will eventuate. It's just so critical what's at stake in this election. It's the difference, I think, in essence, between a government with imagination to put forward policy for the future of this country, leaning forward to a couple of decades rather than just election cycles. And I know this has been a hard ask to run that way, to present policy that is long-term, and that's been our biggest challenge. And perhaps we could have done things better in terms of communication, in terms of the way we roll out complicated policy, but there's just so much at stake. We've got a situation of a coalition led by a man who hasn't the knowledge or the imagination to understand what's at stake here in things like the National Broadband Network. So there's a lot at stake, and I really do hope the nation comes with Eden Monaro on this.
Okay, well, Mike Kelly, thanks for taking the time at this stage of your evening, and we'll see what happens in the next hour or two. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm just thawing out. Actually, I'd like to put in a bid for no more winter campaigns if anybody wants to come to Eden Monaro and check it out.
You better speak to your Prime Minister.
Yeah, for sure.
Now,
I personally favour the non-daylight saving campaigns.
Well, it makes this job a little bit easier. Stephen Smith, you've got some new figures.
Nearly 9% counted in Robertson, a 1% swing towards us.
So this is Robertson in New South Wales Central Coast, which is a critical seat for you. You're on a very fine margin.
A critical seat, so that's good news. But again, still early.
Sorry, now just take me through that again. That figure.
A 1% swing to us in Robertson with nearly 9% counted. So 51% to us, two-party preferred.
Well, you start to take it seriously on 9%, don't you?
Well, I'm naturally cautious, as you know.
Yes, I do.
But I wouldn't have mentioned it if I didn't think it was encouraging. The worry for us is the swing in Queensland, particularly in Brisbane, does look like it's a big one. That's the worry. Meanwhile, in Victoria, I think we're doing well in McEwen. I think we'll win McEwen. Corangamite's a bit tighter than I would want it to be, and Latrobe, I think we have our nose in front, but both Corangamite and Latrobe too early.
Yeah,
I think Mike Kelly has won Eden Monaro. I think the test now is whether Eden Monaro remains the bellwether seat.
Yeah, I think this could be an election where Eden Monaro breaks its tradition and stays with the Labor Party, but they lose government. I think that's possible. Mike Kelly's established himself well there, despite David Gazard being a very good Liberal candidate. Because the anger and the real sentiment in New South Wales is in that Western Sydney and Central Coast area. It hasn't affected the Southern Highlands and the Southern Coast nearly as much. Kerry, I think one thing that is interesting is, with 12% counted nationally now, Labor is on its equal lowest primary vote since the war of 37.6%, a loss of nearly 6%. I mean, that's the phenomenon of tonight. I think we're going to see potentially the lowest Labor primary vote.
That's around the Latham figure, isn't it?
That's right. It is bang on the Latham figure of 2004.
Yeah. Well, we might just look at the national figures now. Take something of an overview, because that will tell its own story. We've got, as Nick said, 12.7% of the vote counted. Let's just look at how that breaks down in two-party preferred terms. We've got 49.2% to Labor, 50.8% to the Liberals, and that is a swing nationally away from Labor of 3.5%. Bearing in mind, we've got to see how that breaks down from place to place. But to get a better idea of how it is breaking down, let's cross to Lee Sales.
Thanks, Kerry, and good evening to viewers who might be joining us for the first time. It is early in the counting, obviously, but let's go over what we know so far and have a look at it in a little bit of closer detail. If we can start with the seats that have been won so far, the Labor Party has 51 seats. It looks like they may have lost 5. The Coalition has 49 seats. They've picked up 5. At this stage, the Greens don't have any seats in the House of Representatives. As I say, it is early in the evening, and we anticipate that there will be 3 independents in the House of Representatives. That's with about 13% of the vote counted. If we can take a look at how the primary vote is working out at this stage, if you have a look here, you'll see the Labor Party is sitting on 37.5% of the primary vote. The Coalition ahead on 44%. The Greens polling about 11%, and the minor parties and independents about 7.3% at this stage. In terms of the comparison to the 2007 election result, Labor has a 5.8% swing against it. There's a 1.7% swing to the coalition. The Greens would be pleased to see a 3.6% swing going their way, and other minor parties and independents picking up 0.5%. How does the chamber look overall? If we take a look at our chamber